I dated my husband's best friend. 6 stories about women's adultery. For someone, adultery is impossible under any circumstances. Someone considers such an act as a last resort, and someone decides to do it without thinking. 6 women anonymously told their personal stories and explained why at some point they stopped being faithful to their man. And a psychologist and a sexologist commented on such a phenomenon as female infidelity. Story 1. Woman 36 years old, lied to our families about business, and ourselves rushed to a hotel with an hourly rate maternity leave. Restrictions due to the pandemic, a husband working remotely. All of this turned my life into something dull and monotonous. The news of meeting up with my high school friends excited me. "You're getting ready like you have a lover waiting around the corner," my husband joked that day. He couldn't have guessed that the mother of an 11-month-old son would freak out after some classmate reunion. I was once in love with a boy who sat behind me at the desk behind me. I remember doing new hairstyles every day to please him. One day I heard a voice behind me say, "That's the prettiest one. Do that." The high school crush didn't develop into anything, but even in high school I often thought of this guy. We never talked to him after graduation, although there were plenty of opportunities. At least half the class had come to the class reunion. He and I sat far apart, but for a moment our gazes met and a shiver ran through my body. From that moment on, I was sure we were in for some kind of sequel, and so it was. The only option for meetings was hotels with hourly rates. The first time was embarrassing to go in there, but I really wanted to. He has a family, 2 kids. I have a husband and a young son who had to be left with a relative when I needed to leave the house. I wiggled through the lies like a snake on hot coals. This is an extremely difficult task for a woman on maternity leave. The affair lasted several months. During this time, I lost more than 10 pounds and liked myself in the mirror insanely. My husband complimented me, saying that motherhood was good for me. Strange. How could he not notice the obvious? I guess I was cheating on him so brazenly that he couldn't imagine that his wife was capable of such a thing. It was my lover who suggested that we end our meetings, which I did not expect at all, and at first even took his wife turned out to be more perceptive than my husband and suspected infidelity. I had to put an end to it. Yes, after some time he called and offered to meet again, but by this time I cooled to. Do I regret it? In a way, yes, because infidelity is despicable, and I recognize that. On the other hand, I console myself with the fact that without this episode I would hardly have lost excess weight so quickly, and I look at my husband differently. 28 years old. I took a guy away from a girl to sleep with him. To get back at my husband, I cheated on my husband during a business trip. Whereas, I was going on a business trip to finally do it. There were 3 suitors. One of them was so deaf that he did not understand my intentions, although they were unambiguous. The second did not cause sympathy and was considered by me. The third eye, frankly speaking, beat off the competitor. Yes, the young man showed attention to the other girl, and she just flapped her eyelashes. And I mentally said to her, "Lily, don't have to thank me for the master class." It was very easy. It was enough to massage his collar zone for a minute right in the cab. The main thing was how to do it, and how to look into his eyes, that playfully. He never went near that girl again. I know that I was judged behind my eyes by those with whom I went on a business trip. I know that they whispered, because everything was obvious. Who was once caught in infidelity. I don't regret it, and I'm not going to regret it. It was after this infidelity. I could forgive myself only after 5 years. I had a student marriage. We got married 6 months after we met, and just a month and a half after the wedding, I got pregnant. Then everything went the classic way. My husband worked. I stayed at home with the baby. It was very hard for me both physically and mentally because I had just graduated from the institute and did not even have time to work. Most of my girlfriends were into class projects and didn't understand my motherhood at all. There were no grandparents around. I didn't have time to make friends in the city where I moved to live. My husband began to go on business trips often, went to work on weekends. I had a strong burnout. We began to constantly scandalize. Further, it was even worse. My husband began to come home drunk. I was terribly angry and felt worthless. One day, when my husband came home in the morning, I decided to take revenge on him. We met a guy on Messenger, and the conversation immediately turned to intimate topics. We set a date for X day. I arranged a babysitter in advance. At that time, I was already working part-time and spent almost a month's income on a nanny. I went to my new acquaintance's house and we made love the same night. It was very mediocre. I had no pleasure or experience on top of that. He wasn't a very nice man. He knew my difficult situation, but he didn't even offer to drive me back home or spend any time together afterward. I would go back alone to my baby and cry. If I had gotten back at anyone, it was myself. My husband never found out about this encounter and never will because we divorced soon after. I only added to my own emotional problems. I regretted this act for a long time, and I was able to forgive myself only 5 years later. Story 4. My husband told me, "If you really want it, I don't mind." I was 32 years old and had been married for about 7 years at that point. At some point, I realized that in my relationship with my husband, we had become more relatives to each other than husband and wife. Intimacy became routine at first, and then disappeared altogether. Months, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I didn't understand why we hadn't been intimate for so long, so I decided to talk to my husband. And you wanted passion after so many years of marriage? Ask your friends. I'm sure they don't have it any better. My husband told me off. But I didn't give up, despite the fact that we have 2 children. I tried to organize romantic evenings, dinners by candlelight, trips to concerts. I even tried to drag him to a country hotel to revive the passion. And my husband saw all my efforts and once casually said, "If you really want to, I do not mind. But there is a condition. I must never find out about it." One day my friend invited us to a party, but he blew me off rather harshly. "You're the one who wants to have fun, so go. I'll be with the kids." At a party, I met an interesting man whom I liked in appearance. We got to talking. I was interested in him. He turned out to be married, and for me, communication with married men is taboo. But we were so good together that evening. We both realized that our families had long since extinguished passion. After the party, we kissed and then began a stormy correspondence. It was a very clever and creative person. You can say the pleasures I received from just messages. A little later, the real pleasures came. We started to meet him secretly. Our connection lasted about 5 or 6 months. During this time, I felt desirable, confident, bright again. I started exercising, lost weight, and was filled with inner energy. I started to feel much better in my family life too. But still, I decided to part with my lover for several reasons. First, that initial passion was no longer there. Secondly, I was constantly tormented by guilt towards both my husband and my lover. I thought I had no right to set another woman up like that. By chance, I saw her photo in social networks with mutual friends. She was very nice. That was the last straw. My lover accepted my decision, and we have never seen each other since. My lover blackmailed me with personal correspondence. I have cheated several times in my life. All these cheats happened during a permanent serious relationship in about the second or third year of its continuation. When I dated someone for a long time, towards the end, I always felt like this person was depriving me of other opportunities, and that he was with me just out of habit, not because he loved me, that there was any other way to solve this problem. I didn't think about. I found new guys in different places. I met a pharmacy clerk once, dating at parties, friends of friends. A couple times there were stories with coworkers. I'll tell you more about one of them. Then I was in my third year in a relationship, living together with my boyfriend and working in an advertising agency. One day, a new copywriter came to us. I hooked up with him. Our close relationship, I started staying late at work. I didn't bring him home because my boyfriend was freelancing at the time. Sometimes we met at my lover's house, but he lived with his parents, and it was not very convenient. Then I wanted to break off this relationship and pretend that nothing happened. But the lover started blackmailing me with personal correspondence. I couldn't leave, so I just waited for it all to resolve itself somehow. My boyfriend, by the way, was very jealous and already suspected me of cheating. I was terrified and paranoid, waiting for the outcome. One day, my lover and I were riding the subway cuddled up together and happened to meet my boyfriend. That was enough. That night, I had to move in with a friend. I started dating my lover. He became my boyfriend. He is not a completely normal person, and the relationship with him became a serious test for me. I cheated on him too, more than once. I got a job in another place, and once at a corporate party I met a guy with whom I later cheated. I went to visit him. And once, when the guy was not at home, I dragged a new lover to my place, and in the morning, even with neighbors, introduced him. And then I pretended it never happened. I cheated on him one more time when we had a fight. My young man said that he could not spend the evening with me, and I took and went to visit an acquaintance whom I had seen only once before. I have a very low self-esteem, and for some reason I was trying to improve it by having relationships, affairs on the side, and sexual intercourse with anyone. Stable, good relationships were not enough for me. I quickly stopped believing in their value. After these outings, I felt good for a short time, like I was getting an AY. Relationships on the side are very exhausting, and once I got mine, I was eager to end them. In fact, I didn't really need these people. I was just covering my inner deficit at their expense. Essex, woman, 44. I had an intimate relationship with my husband's best friend while he was in the neighboring apartment by the age of 30. I was, as they say, a divorcee with a trailer. There were no suitable men around, and I didn't want to be alone. One day in the entrance of my building, I ran into a strange, drunk man. He started complimenting me, making jokes. It turned out that he was a guest of one of my upstairs neighbors. They were celebrating a birthday. We exchanged phone numbers. After this meeting, my new acquaintance began to appear more often at my neighbor's house to see me. Once he stayed overnight, not at his friend's place, but in my apartment. It's hard to explain all this, But after only 2 months, he moved in with me and called me his wife, bought my daughter presents. We created a semblance of a family, took photos together, invited loved ones to visit us. My civil husband's friend lived 2 floors above us, so on weekends he would come for a beer or we would go to his place. The guy got too close to our family, and it didn't end well. I long wished I had met my own neighbor sooner, rather than his friend who became my husband. Several times I made love to my husband's best friend while he was practically in the next apartment. The first time it happened was when I went to pick up a cell phone that my roommate had forgotten. My best friend didn't reveal the truth for a long time, but then he came clean. My husband moved back in with his mom, and I was hoping for a continued relationship with my roommate. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And he said a couple times, "I wish we had met differently." As far as I know, the friends are still in touch. Thank you for watching. If you liked the story, subscribe to my channel, put likes and press the bell. A lot of new, interesting romantic stories are waiting for you ahead.